Tucker low IQ. Tell them that Candace is unattractive. Oh, and call Alex Jones a nut job.
I've given you war. I've given you chaos. I've done everything you've asked me to.
Asked? Silly Donnie, I don't ask. Baby, it's me. He's gone. I'm in charge now. You'll get everything. The wars, the money, all of it. Now about these tapes.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Webster Report on this Sunday, the 12th of April, 2026, according to the Gregorian calendar. Well, what can we say and where can we start, Alex? We've got everything that's going on. That video there, somebody commented on it earlier that, you know, if we didn't know better, that could be actually how this has panned out, because Donald Trump has certainly changed the script on this. You know, it was open the Straits of Hormuz. Now he's going to go and shut it. All this provocation, all these things that we've got going on, all these countries, and we still see this very small country that is right in the middle of all this. What do you think? Where do you want to start picking at this one this week?
So I think we've touched on these things in the past. Chaos and order is basically the bottom line. And those are principles we see in creation myths, creation accounts. The order was brought forth out of chaos. Now, you know, whichever order you believe order and chaos came in, you can have that debate. But they definitely, in an ongoing dance, always have been at what we call the cosmological level. Cosmology is basically the study of our origins. It isn't just cosmology as physics understands it. It's where do we come from? Where do we start? So Big Bang is one of the things that the physicists will talk about. But humans can ask that question. You know, where do we come from? So the Genesis account provides a cosmology. It gives an account for our origins, which starts in the beginning. God created the heavens and the earth was formless and void. And then there are other creation myths. So there's an order and chaos dance. And people like Jordan Peterson have spoken about it on a psychological level, connected to the myths, and even represented them as light and dark principles. So sun and moon, rationality or reason and emotion, two aspects, and even man and woman. Man equals the daylight, the analysis, the technical stuff. 2 + 2 = 4, if that's the system you're using, and the women provide the emotion. They provide the variety, the things, and in philosophy, it was Parmenides was the philosopher of constancy. Heraclitus was the philosopher of flux. You can't step into the same river twice. It's basically processes of flux and change and processes of constancy. Constancy is usually associated with order and stability. That's why people talk about order as a good thing. Global order, new world order, and not just in the conspiratorial sense of a plan to establish one, but there's always a sort of world order. Certainly since the media age, there's been a more unified world order where everybody in the world who's got access to a device can be part of a unified narrative and buy into it. You know, before media, things were much more localized. The world's been shrunk in some ways through mass media. So yeah, we're in a chaos and order dance that's always existed. And what Trump typically appears to be doing, regardless of what you think of him, he is stirring the pot. Now, as we know, there are those who say he's one of the white hats, and others say, no, he's dodgy, he's malevolent, and others say, well, he could be either, or he could be both, or he's a trickster figure, or he's a third way. There are some people who said he represented a third way that we've not seen before. But whatever it is, he's stirring the pot. So he's bringing or allowing a bunch of chaotic influences to stir the pot. What that does typically for people, it destabilizes the current order. And usually, if you're talking about societal planners, we destabilize the current order in order to instate our own. So with migration, Kalergi, however you see it, the massive influx of migrants now into Spain from Africa, tons, it's totally reconstituting the balance of mainland Europe, which is a culture war. It's bringing chaos to destabilize the existing culture that's there in order to bring forces of change. So clearly there's planning involved. So what's Trump's part in this?
I think they had a bit more to it than that, because not only did the migration come over with changing the culture, but you see this education system now that is teaching absolute falsities if we say that we were taught the right things. You know, I saw this week that schools were being taught, some schools, I'm not sure the curriculum, whether it was South Wales or down south somewhere, but they were teaching about Stonehenge being built by black people. Now, this is part of that agenda where everything's inclusive. Well, when you include everything, you always exclude something. And it seems to be the culture that this country ever once had. They're trying to say that there was never any culture here until certain things. But in the same breath, they'll tell you that Jerusalem is over here, mate, and that Jesus has been over here, and the Druids are part of all that. So they'll tell you all these mythical stories that have been passed down through traditions, and they all point back to the same common roots. Well, when you get past all the fantasies, you get to these routines of bloodlines again, Alex, and it's the same thing coming back to the same old story. So the new order is nothing new. It's been the order that they've always wanted, that they once had. They want back what they had once upon a time when there was giants in the earth in those days, Alex. This is what they believe. They somehow believe that this is what they're going back to. Now, if these people are generating all this, injecting this, whipping all this crap up to bring on Armageddon, basically, because they want Jesus to come back. So if they bring it on and do it quicker, it brings Jesus back. And we know that this one that comes back is not going to be Jesus. We're going to see somebody who claims to be that. And this is going to bring in the peace and safety in the new order, which is the new religion of one world. One of which, if you don't believe that that man there is not Jesus, but he's not God, he's the Messiah. If you don't believe that, then you're an idolater because you believe that Jesus is God. So this is where they believe they're going to get all this. How these rabbinic Jews then pass all this off, particularly to the Muslims, is that anybody who's a non-Jew now becomes an immediate slave of every Jew. You know, these ethnic Jews, the ones that God says he has no interest in the persons of them. Where does this, you know, this is getting pretty tight now, mate.
Well, all I know is that I've now been, I now feel disillusioned because, you've bust me myth bubble that black people didn't build Stonehenge. I'd heard on good authority from Zach Polanski that it was gay black people actually who built Stonehenge, and now I don't know.
I'll tell you what I can't get over. I can't get over in one of the depositions in America, where they were asking about the budget that had been spent, and there'd been multi-millions spent on making geographical maps gayer. That was the term that they used. What? How many millions? Well, we just want to make it gay, so we'll throw 10 million at that. Will that make it gay enough? What world is this? You know, when we do look at the Bible that says this stands on its own, when cities got into the state of let's make this gayer, let's make this all this, let's make it trans, let's make it there is no sexes, let's make it women can be men and men can get pregnant and all this, that those type of societies had been judged, and there's a certain point that you get that you can't go beyond. You know, it's just, you know, God's grace is being diminishing slowly over a period of time. It's like all this stuff has been happening in slow motion since it came to earth, since it came into being. You know, this fall had happened long before we even understand what dates we've got. The Jews can go back 5,000 years on their calendar. We've got to try and ascertain where we're at. That's why we had that discrepancy like we did last week. You know, people are celebrating Resurrection Sunday when, according to the Passover week, that's when he went to the cross. So for me, I can't associate that the two don't mix for me. So it means I have to make a decision. You know, say Happy Easter to people when what does that even mean? And people don't know what it means. It's just a morning, Happy Easter, you know, Holy Fool's Day. We don't know any of these things. We just do them.
Yeah, Yeah, well, I think the thing is, obviously, I think we were having a conversation in the week on Tuesday when I bobbed over, and I might have been mentioning the old Bolt Wanderers legend John McGinley. I don't think I mentioned it on the show last week, and he was being interviewed by Sharon Britton, and it was one of those typical sickly PR stunts by Sharon, as all managing directors of football clubs want to do. It was so affected and twee, and obviously they've got like cashless in stadium and everything. You know, obviously they've got the standard boot out races and stuff. Who could disagree with that? But then they've got cameras on everyone. You know, you can't do this, you can't do that. They want to digitize everything, so they're properly in line with the agenda. But she's interviewing McGinley, and he is a legend of Bolt Wanderers Football Club. And even he was talking about the Easter Bunny and how he likes to surprise his grandchildren every year. But I can forgive him that because that's what the culture has taught him. You know, so now
We've all been
effectively,
taught it.
say again.
We've all been taught it.
Well, it's the thing about it is the church was supposed to be the light that didn't do that, but the church has been conformed to it. So when you've got old grannies in churches bringing chocolate eggs in for kids, and you know, and you've got the whole Easter Bunny thing, what they're doing, you know, they're adding Jesus as a footnote. Oh yeah, well, Good Friday. Yeah, that's when they killed the rabbits. No, it's not. They didn't kill the rabbits. It's a fertility festival. So we didn't kill the rabbits. Oh, well, what's Good Friday about? Oh, yeah, that Jesus guy. Well, that's what we go to church for, because we've still got
you got
some.
Chippy. You got Chippy.
Yeah, but
You get
on
fish,
Friday.
mate.
But you know, get your eggs, and you'll be fine. So, but McGinley, you know, a lot of time for, because it's a family time, and they were talking about everything that it should be. Should be a family time. Should be this. Should be that. He started talking about spring coming from winter, people coming alive again. So he was basically aligning Easter himself consciously with the shift of seasons. Now, that's not illegitimate from an experiential point of view within any culture, if it's not Christian, to say, yeah, we celebrate the turning of the wheel, spring, new life, and we're happy about that. We can get out of the house. There's no problem with that if that's what people want to do. But the church, unfortunately, has allowed that culture to creep in and has not stood the way that it should have done. So Jesus has been relegated. Partially, that's not just about the paganism bit, that's the consumerism bit. As with Christmas, we want to sell products and we want to.
It's all of the above. It's all of the above, because the pagan act has no, you know, it's no different to any of the other aspects of it. All these religious aspects are all part of the same side. You know, when you mentioned about the sun and the moon aspects, the sun being Satan, moon being Baal, the yin and the yang, these are all partial to the paganistic interpretations. Ishtar, you can't go anywhere without Baal if you've got Ishtar. So the factor is, these eggs, I mean, I'll tell you how much it meant in our house about it. And I grew up in a shop that was full of Easter eggs. I said to my mum, I says, Mum, I don't eat these Easter eggs. Will you just ask them if they want to get me something, just give me some money. So I started earning money. So Easter was a money-making thing for me, because I always felt I lost out at Christmas because my birthday was so close. That's for your birthday and Christmas. Well, that's the same thing now when we don't even know specifically of a date of birth for Jesus. But to put it with all these pagan deities, I know that's not true. To know that the churches support that, whilst 2 months earlier they've got an altar with a pumpkin on it and bats and Halloween stuff there, and the church is supporting that as well. You see that the church has been watered down from that light, if there's any light left there. And, you know, even the churches that Jesus wrote to, 5 were rebuked. There was only 2. Those 2 witnesses are still shouting. Those are the ones that are in the wilderness at the minute, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, again, for me, I always try and be precise about the language that I use. So, for example, paganism is a very broad thing. Like, you get like right through to heathens. Technically, the Celts were pagans, the Norse were pagans. The Norse gods obviously are specific expressions, you know, Odin, Thor, and Loki, and Freya, and all those. But not all pagans have gods. Some do, some don't. Some just observe the seasonal cycles. They live close to the land. So theological systems and pagan systems can overlap, but not necessarily. And in the most, I don't know, innocent or innocuous forms of paganism, you know, whether it's trees or cherry blossoms or all the signs that indicate changes in the year, they become like a calendar, but a living calendar, not one that you get printed, you know, and then distributed to all your mates with your grandchildren on or whatever for 12 months of the year. And that stuff actually reflects the God of creation. So, you know, I'm more sympathetic to elements of paganism that don't involve gods, that just involve nature. And, you know, we have a Christian tradition that's very down on paganism because it sees the deification of nature. So the problem of paganism's representation of nature is that it deifies nature, which it shouldn't do. But it still has something in the seasons and the cycles, which is more valuable than our artificial calendar. So I don't have a total downer on people who want to align with earthly rhythms in themselves if they don't already have a faith. It's the problem for me is the culture, because the church has sold out. So I'm not really too bothered about other forms of worship. People are free to choose what they want to believe in, and I don't believe that's God gives free will. So it's the role of the church to embody the light that is Christ, and in order to do that, you have to, yes, you have to have faith. You're saved by His grace only, but then there's transformation, and then there's example, and He works through you if you're regenerate. And then it's His business what He does in the hearts and minds of other people. And I don't think, I think that because if you look at the Jewish tradition, God called a special people through Abraham, through which to reveal His message. So they weren't special because they were special in themselves. They were special because they were set apart to God. And through that lineage, He was going to reveal, He was going to enter into history. Now, if it was the case that nobody else, Native Americans, couldn't be saved because tough, you weren't in the right geography, you'd have to have a theology that said, yeah, He damned everybody who wasn't part of that culture, but He didn't. Now, the thing about that is then we've got to be realistic. I think the Lord provided a way through creation, and Romans 1 makes that very clear, that there are natural things that people can recognize that reflect God's hallmark. So I do think there's a lot of good stuff that goes on in those traditions. The problem is they're not, the lesser now. They're to be replaced not in the sense of being got rid of, but the fulfillment. They all foreshadow something much greater. The fact, for example, paganism and any theology of creation cannot deal with the problem of corruption of creation. It can't deal with the sin problem. And what is sin? Corruption. And essentially every week, what we talk about on this show is the evidence of sin. It's and what is sin? It's rebellion against God. It's shaking the fist against the one who created the order, not a new world order of political control, His divine order, which was meant to be a protection for all of us, so that His creation could continue to be fruitful, because He wanted it to be fruitful. He wanted us to be fruitful and multiply. Anything that gets in the way of that is anti-creation, anti-human, anti-God. So we've got to remember that sin, when people use that three-letter word, they start thinking about Victorian, moralistic ideas about, you know, you shouted at a rabbit. Oh, you traumatized a rabbit, that's a sin. You know, and they have this like very moralistic view. But realistically, sin is being out of alignment with God, the creator of everything, including yourself. What happens when you get out of alignment with how things should be, part of the design? Things start going wrong. People start attacking each other. People get into ego and competitiveness. Then they end up killing each other. Then you get wars and rumors of wars. So there's a reason for all this depravity. And people can say, oh, sin, oh, that's a terrible religious word. Well, look around yourself in the world you're living in. Are you not seeing things going wrong? Call it something else then. Call it I don't care what you call it. it's disruption at a fundamental level, and we're seeing it more and more. We're seeing it multiplying. So what's the solution? Paganism and all other religions have no solution, even if through nature they see a reflection of God.
Well, the solution is you become God, Alex. You know,
But
even
exactly.
even some religions that say they believe in Jesus believe that they can become like gods. You know, this is the age-old lie. And what we're talking about here is a little leaven. The reason the church was meant to be so against it was because every time this happened from the beginning, the Israelites, look at the tribe that was divorced, the tribe of Dan, they were completely gone. They didn't want anything. They wanted to do this world. They didn't want to have anything to do with God. That lineage has just progressed into whatever this is now. The flood, everything was corrupt. There was no coming back from that. It needed another reset. But because God has to have that balance of good and evil, how can men know the difference between good and evil if there's nothing bad? We look at Job. He'd done nothing wrong to deserve all that, but Satan knew that he hadn't been tested. So we still was on this test, but God had given us the remedy from the beginning. He'd always intended to do this. That's why a certain lineage was brought. You know, when you hear things like Mary was a Moabite, you know, you wouldn't think that God would choose such a lineage like that. But as you said, it's not about the ethnicity, it's not about the bloodline, it's about God's plan, how this is going to work, how if you look at the matrix, how that what the architect of that creates everything. He's put things in there that these little party tricks that they learned in heaven are of no use. You know, you've done all this and all you've done is expose yourself and you're just going to fight to the death. Then you've got your minions that are in this world, those familiars, and then the underlings to the familiars that are like, you know, in judiciary and banking and all this, the people that people don't believe they exist. People like Ronald Bernard's family, these bloodlines that, you know, they participate in all these kind of rituals. And it's always about power, Alex. It's not about money. It's not about oil. That's what we look at. But that's not what this is about. This is about unification of everything under one rule. And as you said, maybe the pot needs stirring for that. But you've got a lot of aspects that if you're only focusing on one or two, then, you know, we need to look at something much bigger, because council tax is very important. There's a lot of people switching on to council tax. You know, that fear is now turning into a bit of resistance, Alex. Again, we look back 10 years. If we'd have had this 10 years ago, we could have done something. But now it's come to this. People have just gone, whoa, this is enough. We've just got to, you know, keep going with this.
We've got to
keep our eyes on the ball. Go on, sorry, Paul.
I'll just give it, when you mentioned that, I'll just give the anecdote that we're talking about off air. So I've got an empty second property that I'm getting screwed on council tax for. And somebody who was living in that house, an ex-friend of mine now, basically left it with about 3 months worth of council tax, having left sharpish. And I had some contact with the council in, I think it was the 8th of January. And basically the guy said, yeah, we'll send something out through the post within 5 days, so you can pay in cash down at the post office, because basically the rest of the time I have a direct debit for my main residence, so it's empty. I have to pay 100% on the second one. So now my council tax indebtedness is £2,800 a year, basically for nothing. And if somebody stole one of my bins, they try and charge me £20 to replace it, when I'm spending nearly £3,000 on something that I shouldn't have to pay. Now, that's not the point I'm making. Through the postal system, they should have sent that out within 5 days. It never came. So then I've also been discovering, because I don't have a regular letterbox, it's attached to, I have a front door as a gate, and I don't have a regular front door. of this one-bed cottage. And basically, I was checking for this thing that had come and it didn't come. In the meantime, you know, for various reasons, I'd been out and about and I hadn't checked my letterbox. I had a bit of a fear about opening it. And I don't receive much mail anyway. So I thought, oh, well. When I checked, it hadn't come within 5 days. It hadn't come within 3 weeks. So I thought, oh, well, they mustn't have sent it out. And they told me that they couldn't send it to the other address. It had to be sent to the person that they were dealing with at my address. So when it didn't come, I thought, oh, well, they must have written it off, because it originally got a bill saying it was zeroized until the start of the new year. So I thought, okay, they must have changed their mind. I've not received anything. Didn't follow it up. Hadn't checked my box for a while. Checked it on Thursday. Discovered that they had sent a reminder letter out that I'd missed. But then they'd sent me to a magistrate's court and I'd been charged £100 costs. But I also found 4 letters, actually, a polling card for number 8 and I'm number 6, and 3 letters for number 3. So the postman, whoever he is, who can't be bothered because the numbers are a bit funny on my street, he just decided, oh, there's a letterbox there, I'll post it there. You know, no problem for me that. So other people haven't been getting the mail, just like I haven't been getting the mail because of that. And when I phoned up and said, well, hold on, I've not received anything, said, tough, you have to pay. And if you just pay the amount that you owe and don't pay the court costs, there'll still be recovery costs and they'll still escalate. And it was like no cigar. I thought, I'm not fighting this because I can't be bothered. At the time, I've got too many other things going on. So I've just taken £100 hit. So it's a good example. It's definitely Royal Mail's fault that I didn't get the reminders in a timely fashion. And several letters went missing, not just one. And I know that because other letters are being delivered from other properties to my letterbox. And I've had other stuff where I've had to go into a building society because they've said, oh, we've had returned mail, because for some reason they struggled to find my letterbox. I don't know what the hell that's about. So then I have to prove my identity again. So if you look at that, I mean, I am getting completely spanked. And on top of that, I have a £100 fine, which I've no chance of contesting. So they are screwing everybody to the floor, increasing everything. And I think it's just a matter of time before there's civil unrest. You see it happening in Ireland now. And, you know, it's a bit of a race against time because there is going to be some sort of bloodshed, I think.
I hope not. I hope there's a better way of doing it, because if there's anything that they would settle for, it is that. They certainly don't want to go toe to toe in court with any of this stuff. But it's strange. You say all that, and I know how much you've got on, mate. But on top of all that, Alex, you're paying for a shop that you've not got. You're paying a tax on a property that is not commercial, and you're thinking paying £100 is a light get off. Do you see what has happened to society by all this legislation that's put in place? It's more imperative to me now, because if the title to that property has no Mr. attached to it, how can they then say, yes, it's a commercial property tax? How can they can't presume anything. That would have to be proved. You could go and get a court of record and do that. That is what I'm hoping all these people are going to do. Because I said on the show last week before, 70% it's gone up, council tax debt in the last 5 years. And that's all over COVID, when people went on furlough. So they were paid to go on holiday, they were paid to stay at home, and then lost their jobs magically. And then all these debts come up, and, you know, council tax debts were being appointed to bailiffs. One debt every minute was being appointed to a bailiff. So something's got to give there. And like I said, if we sort this title out, I think all that presumption goes. But it's then we've got to know how to operate this court system. We've got to be able to get out the public, go into the private, set a court of record. Can we do that? Can people organise? Can we all do that? Is it the right way to go? There's one thing for me is that title being clouded gives presumption, and that presumption unrebutted stands. They tell you that. So for me, that's the first thing I'd be starting with. But it stings, Alex, because like I say, when you learn that we've been groomed into acting in such a way in society by our parents, and they would groom the same, that it creates all this ambiguity that allows the people that you put so much trust in to, just do what they want. And I'm not saying everybody, I'm saying the system. I know there's good people that try and do good things in that system. The solicitor who I work with had spent 20 years working for other people, no recognition. So he started up on his own because he wants to help people. When he had clients that there was no money in, no equity, we can't take them on. That was happening all the time. I've heard it myself. When you go and ask them real meat and potato things. A friend of mine got injured at work, and it was a no-win, no-fee. Oh yeah, of course we'll sort that. No worries. Who do you work for? Majesty's Prison Service. No, we're not. We won't take that on. So that there's a certain amount of things that they can do and can get away with, but you can't sue yourself. You've got prison service sued by another agency from within the same place. It starts to cause things, but when it's a presumption, and I know because of the titles that I held, I know what they did. I was told what they did, but it was all, that's what we do. Well, how can you do that? How can you presume that that property is somebody else's and we're taking it? If you came out to get in your car and drive somewhere and somebody was taking your car, you'd go, what are you doing? Why are you going that? Well, it's ours now. Well, I've not sold it. Oh, we don't need that. Went to a court and they stamped it and said it's ours now. You go to the court and say what you're doing, and then the court call police on you and stuff like that. You think, what world have I woken up in? But we've been taught that that's normal, Alex. And it's hard to break that spell on people, that all this is joined up. People want to talk about how to get away with council tax, pay with bills of exchange. You paying 100 quid just is going off lightly. I'll take that because I can't take the hassle for something that you shouldn't be paying, you're not liable for. And it's like, that's so maddening now.
Yeah, and I could fight. We know the arguments, and there's a correct procedure, I think. But even if I wasn't going down that path, I think I'd fight them on principle anyway, just for the hell of it. But I just don't want to do it right now. But I think just if you compare property, because the thing is with big picture items, everyone is concerned about the home. It's fundamental. If they're a homeowner, they've got a lot of money locked up in bricks and mortar, and they've often paid a mortgage, whether they should or they shouldn't, over a long period of time.
Sorry, let's just interject there. You said were specific about language. You said you've got these homeowners. That title is clouded. There's no equity in that title. Yeah. There is no owner. This is the issue, that we've got people believe they own property.
Yeah, they don't.
But it's and that's the fraud.
But I think from a common sense point of view, as well, the reality is people will just say, "Well, this is how it works, and based on that, I paid this money in, and therefore this is mine," whether they're right or wrong. Objectively, in terms of psychology, they won't take a risk. Like you'll say yourself, well, don't take the councils on by claiming things about, well, you're sponsoring war, because they could just sign your house over. So you've got to be very careful. But for things like compare diesel and logistics, if you look at trucks, virtually all trucks that are doing freight and transport are diesel. So when diesel prices go up, prices of all transport goes up, all consumer items, all goods, which massively raises inflation. Now, people are not that dumb as to not see that. It's not just them putting petrol or diesel in their car, particularly diesel. It's not the private consumers, it's the businesses, which is going to put that inflation on food, which allows all the parasites, all the supermarkets, all the other places to make a markup. We know that even if they do open the Strait of Hormuz, never mind close it, do the hokey-cokey. If they did open it and it was restored, because the tankers move so slow, there's going to be a problem. And they will also not bring prices down. They'll go up very fast as soon as there's a crisis, and they'll take months to come down. So we're being milked. Now, people know when they're being milked to that level, farmers are right across the board, because the plan is affecting more and more people. There's more likelihood of people changing because of the implications of this fake war and the increase in diesel prices and inflation than anything to do with property, because it's much more in your face. It's a relatively small item at, what was £5 odd a gallon, but has massive implications when it goes up. Okay, diesel's gone up 40%, more or less. Petrol's gone up maybe 20%, bit less. But that has massive, massive implications for people, and not just individual budgets, but supermarkets, inflation. People are working this out. They're already getting screwed. Council taxes are going up. Then they're seeing all migrants coming in. So after a while, it starts to become obvious, even to the people who are a bit more, shall we say, leftist in inclination, a bit more typically humanitarian. Hold on, this is crippling me. So I think that what's happening in Ireland is some of the first fruits about the type of stuff that's going to start happening on the UK mainland. And they've tried to bring the army in a little bit, haven't they? Well, at least talks about it in Ireland. The police have been involved, but apparently ears to the ground is saying the police are saying keep it up, keep up the good work. So they've certainly not got the usual enforcers on side completely. So we are getting to a tipping point, because police have to buy food, people in the army have to, get the food and care for the families. So it's a perilous game, and they've got a plan, they're going to follow it through, but the people are going to do something about it, there's no doubt. And you're not going to need Tommy Robinson to rally them. They'll just be out on the streets. It's going to come, that tipping point will come. They obviously just want us to attack migrants. They want us to have an internal civil war.
He supports Israel. He loves Israel.
Yeah, well, I mean, regardless, but it's the internal civil war there.
Yeah, Daily Express today, Alex, posted that if there are food rationing, they're on about issuing food stamps again. My local food bank had to publish an article warning that you may be asked that your bags are checked because they've been getting thieves going in and robbing the food banks. This is like it's getting beyond all this now. When the diesel is doing all that, and you've got truckers and tractors and farmers and everything going up in arms, you see that it's affecting the locals. It's not until that it does do that you'll see any ripple effects. There's some history I was studying today about a local place near me, Howe Bridge, where there was a battle in 1881 for the Liability Act that was passed, where the miners' welfare, all the miners used to pay into a pot for any miners injured, they would get supported. So this act was passed to make the employers pay into this pot that they didn't like. So all the Northwest 50,000 miners went on strike. A local firm who were, called model employers accepted all the changes, but they had to get out of this contract. They said they'd do all this stuff, but they'd have to come out of the strike. So they were breaking the solidarity up. 15,000 from Wigan, Lee and Haydock all marched to Howe Bridge, started bricking, because the hussars, the army and police all turned up with batons and everything. And this was because they would barely won the chance to be this solidarity of people in a union where they were going to get these rights and get looked after. And I have to say, Howe Bridge miners, they were like one of the first that they built a mining village. They had a bathhouse. People had bought it as a private residence now. All the houses are still there. But there's nothing in these towns now. They are a commuting town and a consuming town. And that doesn't bode well when we start talking about food stamps. But I got Kit Kats today, mate. So if I can still get Kit Kats, today's okay. But when it's only okay until it's not. And, there's so many people, and people have gone through some so really tough times, and they've got plans that are not months, but next year, year after. And I'm going, I don't know how, what's going to happen next week. It's a very strange time to be alive when you've had your eyes opened to how all this stuff actually does join up. You don't see dots and just join lines. These are jumping out. You mentioned about having eyes to see. If you've got common sense, you can understand if one object relates to another. If I say water and cup, you can relate the two being together. But a jumbo jet and what? Come up with something that's nothing to do with that, couldn't even come up with anything. But it just doesn't make sense when you've got things that you can compare. So if I had information like work hard, pay your bills, and then somebody shows me that information is incorrect, and here is what you should do, and I go, I've heard of some of these terms because I know I'm a creditor, but I'm acting as a debtor if I'm paying. That means I'm running a shop, or self-employed as a businessman, or something, something I wasn't. So how do I change that? Well, the first port of call is court, because they allegedly know things about law. You stand in a courtroom and you go, well, people in here should know about law. I realised that when you rang up the Law Society, I couldn't speak to anybody legally trained at the Law Society. There's nobody who'd understand that. They could only put me in touch with solicitors who wouldn't tell me or even interact with me. It was fortunate that I met some people along the way. One of the best ones was a barrister who worked for the Citizens Advice back in 2010. And he brought me documents in and saying, these are acting way out of the jurisdiction here. What's going on? And he says, I can't help you with this. And he knew his pension and everything was on it, his license. He said, I can't help you with this. He said, these shouldn't be doing this. Because he understood what was going on, where I was trying to catch up at the time. Because I was talking about Trustees of Land Act. You're talking about commerce again. And that's what they were standing under, right in my court documents. Trustees of Land Act. Well, who's a trustee of my property? I asked my opposition, I went, who's the trustee? Did we set up a trust? No, we didn't set up a trust. Okay, what's the act pertaining to? And it's only when you read it that you understand that it's only talking about commercial property and a business that's on the mortgage, the owners that we think. So we're just proprietors, we're just tenants of a property, and then that business doesn't work out because they won't pay the council tax rates. Well, we'll just wait till another tenant goes in and we'll charge them council tax. It's such a simple thing, yet it's so difficult for people to understand. But as soon as it contrasted what I was told, I couldn't have that, what we spoke about last week, that convenient lie. That lie that makes me feel all cuddly and fuzzy inside and rocks me to sleep. I need to know that there's something there to be wary of. But when you see it on such a large scale, and then you're the one, it takes me back to the film They Live with Rowdy Roddy Piper, when he puts his sunglasses on and he sees all this. Then he's trying to explain it. Then he has that longest fight scene in film history. Feels like it's about an hour. That get this black fella put these glasses on, and he puts these glasses on, and then they end up hugging and going, "What are we going to do about it?" Well, we'll go and defeat it. We'll go and beat it. Well, how do we do that? It's already been done, but we're seeing it play out, mate. How far are we down the play line?
A long way. I mean, I've just been looking at some comments in chat, right? So I've got Megasaurus, bless. I do like that handle. So big shout out to Megasaurus, who's quoting a few people in the chat. You get the honorary title Webster. I actually get my first name. So my parents told me to pay my bills. That's the message to you. And let's look at this from a sociological perspective, is a message to me. Now, I know I've said that a few times. Let's look at this from a sociological perspective. And I know you've said my parents told me to pay my bills. What I'm not sure of is what Megasaurus is getting at, because there could be something interesting in that. So I just encourage Megasaurus to put a bit more in the chat, so we can actually engage with what the meaning is. Because otherwise, I can recognise the echo. You do say that quite a lot, Paul, and I do say quite a lot. Let's look at this from a sociological perspective. So,
Well,
yeah, just
you know
what
isn't it strange, Alex? Isn't it strange, Alex, that how much I say it, and this gets through to 200 to 300 people a week, how many people don't have a clue what they're talking about. So somebody who comes in every week may say, oh, you just use that. That's a great analogy for a brainwashing. You're doing something that is not good for you, and that shouldn't be told. It's ridiculous, man. I just don't get it. There's so many people who can pick holes at people. You know, it's
I mean,
like,
maybe
it's like on the other
side
of the keyboard. On the other side of the keyboard, their life's perfect. You know, I don't pay any bills. I've not paid anything for 20 years. I've been doing this, and I put a lien on this. All those things are things that you can say, but none of them are ever corroborated. When you start criticizing people, I mean, don't forget, Alex, there's a lot of pain and trauma that's gone through this. So when we start to speak about this stuff, it brings that rawness. You know, the fact that armed police are called on you over stuff that you shouldn't have any issues over, because you're acting within the law as far as you're concerned. But because of the ambiguity, it's a fraud that's being played out. That same ambiguity is applied to the property that is supplied with gas, water, and electric, that they're being treated as customer debtor. That's what everybody does. So for me, because that's my trauma, that's my trigger, that is what I have to tell people to get out. How else do you snap them out of it? Oh, yeah, you've got to trust it. It's your birth certificate and everything's free. It doesn't work like that. You need to give them the details in perspective.
Good.
I had a lot of new people who have come to see this now, and they're asking so many much better questions rather than poo-pooing everything.
Obviously, me directors, made a few comments in chat and said to me, that basically my mistake was that I didn't have to pay it because it was all caps Alex Brocklehurst bill, and I claimed it. Therefore, you're the debtor. Now we know that technically that's correct, but if I'd have gone down that path, there's a good chance that they would have just done what they're going to do anyway, which is the point you're making. Oh well, we'll just take your property off.
With all that equity, they will fight you right up to the hilt, and they've got all the public funding. So you better be damn sure that you're not going to stand there and say it's not my capital letters name. Now, if that is just a throwaway comment in a chat room, and me director has done all that, that's brilliant. But to do that in a chat room, to do that in a group where people are struggling to not only understand it, because that's what they've been taught, to do the card pay your bills bit, all of that is all part of the same brainwashing. So if you can keep repeating something and it brainwashes people, if you keep repeating something, it can also rectify that. This is what we do about deprogramming people. This is all the psychological trauma. You know, it's so... These conversations are not just meant to point at things that are obvious. You know, we talk about scripture. You can't be more obvious than Lucifer being the son of somebody and then knowing who that somebody is and then knowing that the traditional stuff is wrong. When you learn that you shouldn't pay bills, you understand it. But what do? Take everything on? Well, it's my capital letters name. Knock, knock, knock. Single mum, 3 kids, no money. Can't afford all this stuff. We're cutting you off. We're doing this. We're doing that. They either beat you into an ISA, going into the debts, where you get covered and then you get universal credit, blah, blah, blah. But you're going back into the system, back into the matrix. So there's so many people who say, oh, you just do the no capital letters and all that stuff. It's never worked that easy. It should.
Yeah.
Really, really, it should. But It doesn't.
It
So
doesn't
we
in
have to get
practice.
away. We have to get away into. We have to pick the lock. We have to get through that last door. If we get that, if we had a just justice system that wasn't only bankrupt but not corrupt, none of this would be an issue. But
Yeah.
there would be no national debt either. But that would
Yeah.
mean we'd have people who are actually working for our company that we own and not the other way around, because we've decided to not register ourselves and remain lost in our own vessel. So the cargo was I was never meant to be the cargo in this, but
Yeah.
I'm stuck in this cargo hold, and I'm out at sea somewhere, and I've been taught to stay there.
Yeah.
That is why I have to repeat it, because if people can understand that you've been groomed into that, then you've got to have the humility to say, well, what else could be wrong? And there's no ending to that. And it will bring a lot of sorrow, because people base their lives on stuff. If I just do this, if I do these extra hours, if I get this, and then I got my house paid off, and then it's mine. What do you mean I've not paid that credit card bill? Well, it's your fault. It went into the wrong post box. It's this, that, and the other. Oh, well, we're going to have to take your house now. You fund terrorism. It's capital letters. It's birth certificate. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
That's why it gets you too late. Individually, it was easy to pick people off. The fact that I never went in there with an argument, I went in there with this remedy, not the capital letters, but you've sent me this instrument. I sign it, date it, give it you back. It's done. What are you arguing with me for? Are we here about the warrant or that? They told me I brought remedy, Alex. So the fact is that all that is true. Then what else is wrong? Why is it that my mum wouldn't go to a Catholic church, my wife's dad wouldn't go to a Church of England church, but they both go to Methodist? Neither of them are practicing in the religion. So, it blows your mind that you taught these things. Why'd you do that? Because my dad did. You vote later? But yeah, why? Because my dad did. It's bonkers, mate. It's bonkers. And I think they are pushing people to the point where they won't think. They'll just react to something. And are they prepared for that? Are they prepared to have the fallout from that? I've no idea, because there's so many things to keep our eyes on now.
Yeah.
I don't know where we're up to.
Even if you can go down the path that some would call conspiracy, even though we know it isn't, and you went down a more mainstream path, libertarianism within philosophy is really clear about the state. And the state is violent. It violates people. It's legalized mafia. So that the state would obviously shut mafia down if it could, because it would make out that it's on the illegal side of the line. But basically the state is mafia. It's just legalized mafia. So they basically abuse the authority that we've given them to administer the estate of the public in a responsible fashion. They take control of it and say, actually, you've not handed over our assets to distribute for you. You've handed over your assets to us. And that's the way they view it, entitled. Yeah, this is your obligation. You have to give us your assets. No, I don't. I'm giving you this for you to pay for all the functions required. And then with what's left, it's like a disbursement, isn't it? It's put out here, some's put there to fund public services, but they're not doing that. So the state, typically, as soon as it becomes unaccountable, or should we say less accountable than at the beginning, and that was what the US Constitution was about. They did recognise that human nature being what it is, the nature of the British Crown, that you were going to have the same problems coming up over and over again. And that's why they had the right to take up arms. And, because it was to form a militia. Why? To stand against tyranny, which inevitably always comes after time, because as soon as you set something up with good intention, the parasites start to colonize it, manipulate it, legislate within it to turn the ship in their direction. So this is a problem. There's something again in the heart of human beings. It's the sin problem, for which the remedy is different than us, taking the system on correctly. Even if we could do that en masse, that would be one way of bringing about remedy in its own terms. But the reason that that remedy ultimately will not succeed is because the heart of man is deceitful and wicked beyond all imagination, and its inclination is to do evil all the time, which was exactly what was stated at Genesis 6 before the flood. It had to be dealt with. In that case, it was being wiped out temporarily, but because it was still in the heart of man, even though Noah's lineage was pure, we start again, but that corruption is still there, and it begins to multiply again. A little leaven leavens the whole lump. So whenever you've got the state and state actors, no matter how they start off in life, you know, they'll get corrupted in that system, and the system will turn inwards, and it will feather its own nest, and you'll just reinvent the wheel again. So even if you don't take it from the perspective of all the experiences that people like yourself have had, Paul, at the hands of the system and been traumatized, people who want to criticize that in it, like you say, in a chat room, is one thing. But the reality is, whatever the impacts are, they're happening to everybody. And when you are affected by it, it's different than when you're not. So the problem is, what is the deepest remedy that we're going to need? And it's a renewed human being, because these systems will always tend to corruption, and there is no hope ultimately. All humans can do at best under God, before his final judgment of the corruption, is to try and hold it back. And we know that the spirit of lawlessness is already at work in the world, and when the restrainer is taken away, it'll be fully manifested, and that's when everything, the cork comes off the top of the bottle, the underworld creatures come right back out, the devil has his time and a field day. But the church, if it did its job better or more effectively, at best, could express some of the remedy through disciples that would hold back some of the evil for longer. But as with Sodom and Gomorrah, in the end, the point comes where even when Abraham intercedes, there are 50 righteous men. If there are 40 righteous men, 30, down to 10 righteous men, will you spare it? Yes, I will for 10. But then he didn't dare ask God again. And he knew his own nephew was there.
I would say there's the one difference between that and now is that because it must be now on an individual basis, because the hearts were hard then. So
Yeah.
Sodom and Gomorrah over 2 generations, this is normal. This is what we do. Oh, look at this man. Let's make him a millionaire and let him not be able to buy anything. And then he can't travel on, and nobody will sell him anything. And they watch him die. It's like a sport. There's nobody feeling sorry apart from Lot over things like that. So Lot was saved from that. Jesus said that from the cross, it's everything is written in our hearts now, the law. Those who don't know me have a law that is written unto themselves, that showing the law at work. So you've got all these people who, when we say, have you heard the truth? Anybody can hear the words that Jesus is God and he died for your sins. Anybody can hear those words, but do they actually hear it? Do they understand it? Do they thirst for going and finding out about it? I'd never done it, Alex. And then all of a sudden I have this thirst because it's so unique. If you read books about a subject and you saw one book that went against everything, but it seems that there's a bit of a conspiracy going on, that all these other things seem to have a lot of fingers in pies that they've all got, you know, beneficial things from. This is saying, yeah, that's all wrong. This is the only way. This is the reason why, because of this. I created all this. This is what happened. He did that. This, and I've had to do this. And it's like just a unique story of how all the other religions completely mix everything up. This is just straight down the middle. You know, you can't twist it if you let the scripture tell you what it means. As in, don't go off saying, yeah, Lucifer's Satan. Well, say that in scripture. Well, yeah, everybody knows it. No, we don't. Let's go and read it. So where does it say, relate to him? If that one thing is missing, is wrong, and then that one thing is subtly changed within the establishment of the church, and then that one thing changes to celebrating Easter and then Christmas, and then Halloween, hey, sod it, let's put Halloween in there as well. You know, they just dress up as ghosts and demons and everything. You You know, where does that energy go when for the New Agers who celebrate it? You know, the New Age Christians that do it. I had a mate who always said he used to. He ended up going up to senior officer, and good lad, good at his job, but he'd do my job for nothing. If are you on ED tonight? Are you on evening duty? Yeah, I'll do it for you. You get off. Why? He says because my missus will won't go trick or treating. He said 364 days of the year we tell them not to talk to strangers and not take chocolate off them. And one night of the year we kick them up strangers' driveways, knock on a door and ask for toffee. It's not in my tradition that we should do things like that. So you've got somebody who's using common sense based on what you're teaching them, but on the other aspect, which is a spiritual, an energetical thing, like a mock sacrifice, you know, what is the point to a mock sacrifice? Is it just harmless fun? Alex, do we not believe that energy is directed in somewhere, even if it's a low vibration? It's a foundational vibration. It keeps it all going. It keeps that hum, that that white noise going in the background, that tinnitus. It just keeps you in that frequency. And this frequency has to change, but you have to be able to see what is right in front of you. If you can only see that all this world, then what have you been through? All traumas, and then it's all become walls and patches. I don't know, because we say it a lot that we can't go off other people's experiences because we're only spectators. So off my own, no, there was nothing left. There was no way I could understand anything because there was nothing to put my faith in the world. All the politics was corrupt, the banking was corrupt, the benefits system was corrupt, the debt-based economy was corrupt. I'm thinking, but it's meant to all benefit me, and I can't impart this. When you are there trying to learn it and do it at the same time, people 15 years later saying, well, just use your capital letters name, don't accept it. All of that was on the table, but you could clearly see what they was going to do if I'd have said any of that. That's why we needed something so much stronger. You know, when you're asking them about the mortgage, about the deeds and the promissory note and the deed, you're asking them about the accounting, the bills of exchange, all this stuff, the mortgage contract, and they can't provide it. There's something not right. So there's a lot of presuming going on. Property, physical property, is being transferred with no signatures by people who make decisions and can use police. That should be alarming to people, but it isn't.
Yeah. Well, I can't say it. Well, let's look at this from a sociological perspective anymore, can I? Not that I was going to. No. No, I just wanted to say that for the bedevilment, because I wasn't sure it was a sociological point actually should bring to it. But there are many different perspectives, right? So, like I tried to say before, even if you don't go down this path of having had direct experience that's traumatized you, which people forget, and they keep bringing it up and they keep leveraging it. But the reality is trauma is trauma. It's no fun. But it's easy when people haven't been traumatized to, people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, but they do. But like I said about libertarianism and philosophy, you can take it from a perspective that is technically not experiential, not traumatized, and you say, yeah, the state is violence. I don't think there are many people that don't believe the state is a form of violence. Some people might argue that the state is still necessary because they still believe that something like anarchy or libertarianism couldn't work. Now, I personally believe it could work, but people in this world today aren't adult enough to be able to take responsibility at that level. This is why most people would rather not be self-employed, not necessarily because they don't know what to do for a business, but because they don't want to fill in the PAYE. They want their employer to do it for them. People want to pay council tax by direct debit rather than, and we know they shouldn't pay it, but at the end of the day, they would still rather go down and pay it or they'd rather pay it via a direct debit than go down to the town hall and make a human being deal with stuff. So people are going for an easy life. They don't want to chop logs unless it's a fashion statement. Oh, look, I've got a log burner. They don't want to come home, source wood, chop wood, dry wood, have a wood store, light the burner, clear the mess. They'd rather press a button, the lights come on. They'd rather turn a knob and the gas come on. So we have to acknowledge that we have been bred into a form of laziness. People can criticise supermarkets as much as they want. I got some minced beef from Lidl earlier. They're packing it differently than they used to. And it just looks like chunks of beef, like it's been completely reconstituted. You think there's something wrong with this. They're preparing us for something. But as long as we're getting our shrink wrap beef and we're not going to farm shops, if you go to a farm shop, you pay a lot more money, but you're getting better quality food. But people are getting tight on money. So those who still got that sort of free slack, if you like, financially, can still go to the farm shops. But it's getting harder and harder for people. But we've got to make serious choices in this world of ours regarding what our income is, how far it will stretch. But if we don't support local businesses and pay a bit more, then the supermarkets will have more and more of a monopoly. And the more stretch we get, we'll be forced to buy crap with loads of additives in it and be eating pasta which has no nutritional value just to survive. And the chronic long-term effects will be health problems, early, mortality rates going up, people dying sooner. So it's very difficult. It isn't just a simple metric, and we've got to make complex choices in a complex world. There's 1,000,001 different ways to analyze things and look at them. And what we're trying to do is look at it from, the spiritual perspectives, sociological perspectives, psychological perspectives, as many different perspectives as we can, and put experience at the centre of it. So when people come on this show, whether in the chat or if we had a guest on, don't know where Taylor is again tonight, but if we have them on, they can contribute. They can either contribute constructively, right, or chuck stones. It's up to them. But we're all on the same boat, and we're all supposed to be on the same side. So it'd be great if we could big each other up a bit more, I think, as well.
Will be who they are, mate. When you've just set up for this one with what you finished on, people
Right.
that are looking, people look for happiness externally. The thing is, when you have information, it's what is that happiness, or what are you going to settle for? Some moments of happiness, or overall happiness. I was happy yesterday, extremely. But am I happy about the long-term thing? Is something in this world going to fix all this? Is Donald Trump going to fix it? Is Nigel Farage? Is anybody going to be able to do that? No. But all we can do is talk about it, because, as we know, vibrations change, knowledge changes things, 100th monkey syndrome, all that stuff. We can go through many, many different types of analogies. But at the end of the day, we've got to be able to try and discern whether all these dots join or not. When they join, let them join. If you can't come with an open mind to it, that means you're fixed on what you believe in. Well, if you are fixed in work hard, pay your bills, that is going to be a really strong stumbling block, especially if you've come from nothing. My mum and dad worked from working class. They come up during the war, all that stuff. They come from nothing. I had everything. We talk about, softening people. It was our last generation, but I saw somebody did a survey the other day about how many TVs was in your house in the 70s, and everybody was basically putting one. Well, I had my own telly in the 70s, and then in the 80s, and I always had my own telly since. In the later 80s, I had my own phone. People didn't have that, so I knew that. I know, looking back, how privileged I was, but my mum and dad bloody worked hard for that, Alex. To think that they were paying for stuff that they shouldn't be doing as well, and understanding how good a debtor my mum actually was, because she was a businesswoman. She could juggle all them accounts and do all that stuff, but she was doing it, and she should have been doing something different at home, but she was never taught that. And the reasoning behind that is, well, it's there for you to learn. The fact you don't know it doesn't matter. But when you do know it and you stand in these places that are threatening you, then you see how they act. You put the light on, the cockroaches are running everywhere. You need to know where the cockroaches are coming from and what you can do about it. And if it starts at a registration process that is land registry, that then must include the property that you register at DVLA and the property that you register with the registrar when we're born. So all that stuff is being presumed without the equity, but on the value of the equity and the assets. But somebody else is running it. And it just blew my mind, mate. It blew my mind that everything could be so corrupted. That meant, you know, I mean, football was just a game anyway at that point. But when you realised how much is invested to keep people dragging to this, I know people who paid loads of money to go to matches all over the world. And it's for the love of the game. I know people who went to Istanbul and like ended up with an 8-hour flight back paying, you know, like 10 quid for a bottle of water, that much, you know, all this stuff they did for a game, just for a game. It's not just for a game to those people. So when you're emblazoned and bludgeoned and groomed in through a family unit into a society that's been groomed, this is life. You know, you're asking questions. Why? We don't have kids that do that now. We have kids that are, you know, if they're not suffering with some form of ADHD, autism, whatever label you want to give it, then they're scrolling something. They're not thinkers anymore. Maybe I'm being unfair there. I wouldn't say all kids, because I do know a lot of children who are really bright sparks. But you see it in a society type thing. And we see these dots joining. You mentioned about this. So now this fella, John Campbell, he was initially promoter of vaccines and he had the jabs. So ever since he humbled himself, you know, he humbled himself because he saw the statistics and he believed them. So this is what is one of his latest. Technology. Can you hear that?
No.
Probably all types of cancers or many types of cancers after COVID vaccines. Now, of course, we're
Go back to the beginning.
Well,
yeah, it started working.
Concerned for some time now from talking to various experts about the increased risk of cancers, probably all types of cancers or many types of cancers after COVID vaccines. Now, of course, we're deprived of data in the United Kingdom between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. We just can't get that information freely. But there has been a study done in Italy. And what this shows is increased incidence of cancers 6 months after COVID vaccinations. Now, let's look at where we got this from. This is from this paper here, Experimental in Clinical Sciences Journal, peer-reviewed, of course, made publicly available. You can download the PDF. The full paper is there. So people that had vaccinated with at least one dose, their chances of getting colorectal cancer, the hazard ratio was 1.34. In other words, 34% more likely to get it. This is at a 6-month follow-up. Breast cancer, 54% more likely to get breast cancer in the vaccinated group. Bladder cancer, 62% more likely to get it than the unvaccinated group. Well,
was it worth it, mate? Was it worth it for that holiday? That was just one.
Well, no, I mean,
I've lost family. I've lost family and got family who are damaged for life because of this stuff. And nobody wants to do these studies. That was a study in Italy because nobody else wants to do it. The information's there, but nobody wants to collate it. Nobody wants to look at it.
Looking at it from a sociological point of view, this is evidence again of what you would state in other terms of consensus reality. You know, regardless of what people think about work hard, pay your bills, the reality is very clear. People didn't want to look at the consequences of taking a vaccine. They believed naively that the governments that we've already established sociologically and evidentially is not your friend, that the state is violence. We know that. We should know that from our experience. The state is theft because that's what taxes are. They are not dispersed fairly at all. So we basically know that these people are not our friends. We know that these institutions, WHO and others, United Nations, it's just a way, you know, the Sustainable Development Agenda, working with the Green Agenda to basically move beyond governmental policy. And so local authorities, when we serve the police notices and we put all the trees and stuff in, we showed very clearly that over 30 local councils at the time were working directly with the United Nations and bypassing central government. They were mandated to do so. So United Nations policy was directly being implemented by local authorities. And that's why they want to break down national central governments so that you can get these bodies, these quangos, a level beyond nation state governments to work regionally and you know, with not states but with boroughs and regions, because it gives disproportionate amount of control from these centralized bodies. And it's treasonous, but nobody wanted to know. Vaccines, we knew they were going to cause harms in 2020 because we were aware. Whoever we told, they just thought we had tinfoil hats on. I went to a vaccination, went to a police station in Bispham near Blackpool a few years ago now, and we reported once there was a crime number. We took it to the police and said there's a crime number here for one down in, I think it was either in Midlands or London. No, I think it was London. And they'd managed to secure a crime number, the basis of which should have been able to be used to shut down the vaccine centre locally. And we had a really interesting discussion with the sergeants at the station. And he had a lot of sympathy. And at the end of the day, I did the usual diplomatic thing where he obviously said his hands were tied. But I got to have a conversation with him. And that's all you can really do. At the end of the day, these people in uniforms often don't have the trace of a man or a woman inside of them. They're just a bureaucratic unit earning the money, looking the other way, because they've got to pay for food on the table. So that's what they do. But you can still reach that person because they like you and me when they take, you know, the uniform off at end of day, close the curtains at night, they're watching TV or doing whatever they're doing. They're like everybody else. So you can reach them on that level. So there's a bit of leverage that you can get. But yeah, exactly.
But those are people who normally think, Alex, and people who think the police don't seem to want anymore.
Well, that's where the war is, mate. That's where the war is.
They've got kids now running the shop because you've got university graduates coming out of police college straight into sergeant's positions doing fast track stuff. They did it in the prison service. Got idiots who couldn't do the job. You couldn't hand out toilet rolls, but telling other staff how to do the jobs. It's just a ridiculous. I don't know what kind of exercise it is, apart from destroying any chance of a continuity amongst staff and support, so-called, for prisoners and rehabilitation. But there was no rehabilitation. And now we're passing more legislation to arrest more people and fill more jail places up, whilst letting out people who are doing serious crime. They want to replace them with people who are, I mean, they've only just cottoned on to, we can't keep enforcing non-crime things. We can't take a report and say we've reported it as a non-crime. You know, how many times
Yeah.
would you have to report that a day? Hey, nothing's
Well,
happened today. No.
Yeah. Well, so again, sociologically speaking, states require policies to run. Once they've got a policy that everyone's agreed on, the policy just unfolds naturally, procedurally, and bureaucratically. So the policy has to get voted on, ratified, then it's implemented. Then it's no cigar for anyone who tries to change it because it's policy. So the only way then, police, all of them, whatever level in the hierarchy, they follow policy. Policies and procedures, policies and procedures. These are our big enemy right across the world, bureaucratically, policy and procedure, because once they're in place, nothing changes it. There's no higher courts than policy and procedure in real terms. That's a sociological reality. But there are still people operating, even the people who, if you like, drive the truck or the crane driver, who's operating the policies and procedures is a human being. They can be reached. At least in principle, they can be reached by reasoned argument, discussion, appealing to their experience, appealing to their humanity. And even if all you can do is disaffect them with the job that they're doing, look at John Campbell. He was absolutely all in on vaccines at the beginning. He bought into it all. He was medically trained. He was following the prescriptive advice. He was going along with policy and procedure. And you know, the Hippocratic Oath and all this malarkey, you know, it all seemed like, oh yes, do no harm. Well, no, we're protecting people with vaccines.
He still pays his bills in council tax.
Yeah, but he thought at first that the vaccines was just a medical procedure that was doing no harm because it was protecting people. Now he knows different. So the problem is when you're trying to bring about change, yes, there are sociological principles in place, policies, concrete realities, but it's the individuals operating within them. They're embedded in these structures and they don't know how to change them. They're just an operational cog. So the challenge is very great when you're looking at individuals within group settings of various sizes. Like I said, in terms of statism, yeah, violence, theft is what they do, but they've legalized it. But they're trying to have super states and quangos, the EU and as a super state, the United Nations, the World Health Organization, who are not accountable, dealing with regions and localities rather than states because they have disproportionate power. When they've got that in place, they decide the policies outside of any accountability and they're implemented locally and regionally with no kickback, no accountability. So everyone, when you crap, whether you believe in gravity or not, when you crap, it drops downwards. This is what happens in these hierarchies. So they want the hierarchy, the top echelons, to make the decisions and be far away as possible from real people's ability to change it. That's why they want to get rid of states. That's why they're destroying the whole of Europe with the Kalergi plan. That's why they want to develop everything into regions. And regions and localities will not be able to fight back against quangos who will develop the policies. So this is ultimately what we've got to get to. We need to make the case for the corrupt state, funnily enough, because the state's better than what's coming. The super state breaking down into regions, because at least with a state, even though your vote doesn't change very much, at least there's something you can do, at least in principle something you can do, and they try and scupper that, you know, but at least there's something. The further we move away from that, unless you had anarchy or libertarianism, but we're not mature enough as a species to go down that path. And this is why, because people won't grow up and they won't think for themselves, and they want to have the PAYE paid for them, and they want to press a button and the lights come on. Until people can get past that, that's why so many people are preppers, because they've realised they've got our nuts in a vice. So ultimately, we've got to do something about it at that appropriate level, which is sociological, which is psychological, which is spiritual. It's all of these things, regardless of the language that we use to describe it. These are the realities we need to address to bring about change. And ultimately, I don't believe en masse that human beings in our culture have got enough about them to unless it's violent bloodshed, and that's what they want, unless we have a remedy that isn't just natural. And that's the other part of this show, which we always come back to.
Yeah. Evening, Taylor. Afternoon to you.
Hey, what's up?
See, the feds gave you your PC back then.
No, I finally got it out of the repair shop. It was the top half of it was coming off. It needed repairs. So
Your volume's very low, mate.
is this better?
No.
Fuck, hold on. How about this?
It's a little better, yeah.
Okay, that's good. Okay, yeah. So like I said, my laptop was in the freaking repair shop, and I was without it for a little while, but I got it back now. It's all good.
Good. Well, you've joined us at the just at the right moment, I think, with some of the information that we're going to show in these videos, because it'll be worthwhile your comment. We started off with how much Trump has all of a sudden upped to the gear. You know, during Easter, he started blaspheming and calling Iranians and saying they're going to burn in hell and praise Allah, as if he was, like Alex said, stirring the pot a bit. So, you know, where are we up to on this film? Because all of a sudden, you know, it's like something's kicking off here. But we'll just start off with this video, and then, you know, you start to give your opinions on it as we go along, mate. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's all good.
Will be.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I've got technical issues. You could talk amongst yourself, but
Okay, yeah.
when you're at work, shut up.
But yeah, it's all good.
Get U.S. military protection. Then OPEC followed, locking global oil trade into dollars by the mid-1970s.
And that helped them.
Family Guy.
Okay, but seriously, how did oil replace gold as the thing holding the dollar together?
Because after the government ditched gold in 1971, the dollar had no backing and needed a new reason for the world to keep using it.
Why did dropping gold matter so much?
Before 1971, foreign governments could swap dollars for US gold, so trust was automatic. But once that ended, confidence had to be engineered.
So we pulled the safety net and then had to bribe the world to trust paper, huh?
So in 1974, America cut a deal with Saudi Arabia. Price oil in dollars, buy US Treasury bonds with the profits, and get US military protection. Then OPEC followed, locking global oil trade into dollars by the mid-1970s.
And that helped America? How exactly?
It created non-stop global demand for dollars, letting the US run deficits cheaper, what economists call an exorbitant privilege.
So oil paid our credit card bill.
Now it's wobbling, not dead, because China, Russia, and India test non-dollar oil deals. Saudi Arabia joined BRICS Plus, yet most oil is still dollar-priced and the rial stays pegged.
What about war with Iran?
The main reason the United States could uphold the petrodollar system was due to its massive military, hence the massive defense budget. The way it works is if you use the dollar for oil transactions, you get US military protection like the Gulf states, and if you don't, you get bombed. The war with Iran is proving that this isn't as simple as it may seem. Many of the Gulf countries are having second thoughts about the petrodollar, as Iran has been able to put up a fight against the US military, as well as leveraging the Strait of Hormuz to make the US government bend to its demands. This also comes with the fact that the US has prioritized the defense of Israel over the Gulf states, making many rethink their alliance.
What about global reserves?
In recent years, many countries have held US dollars as a reserve currency. Now, with instability in the dollar, many are shifting their reserves to gold, further weakening the dollar's value.
What happens if the petrodollar system fails?
If the petrodollar system falls, the dollar would experience significant inflation, which would lead to serious economic consequences in the US. If accelerated by something like a prolonged war in the Middle East, it could lead to economic collapse.
So basically, if that safety net snaps, we are talking higher prices, weaker dollar, and regular people feeling it fast.
That is the whole story. Oil replaced gold, dollars ruled trade, America gained leverage, and today it's beginning to fall apart.
Are you noticing yet?
I'll start with you on that one then, Taylor. What is this part of the plan that they're kicking in to wake these normies up, or are we seeing something that's, you know, tweaking you differently?
Let me just say that this whole Iran thing has just got me on my seat, just laughing my ass off. You know, I thought the whole freaking Gaza thing was a joke, but this looked like nothing. Every single video that you can put into to Google AI search or Grok always returns with either saying that it's fake or it's old footage from years ago. It's almost as bad as the Ukraine thing back in 2022 when people were when mainstream media outlets were using video game footage and stuff and calling it a video from the ground on Ukraine. It's hilarious. Not to mention also this over the top. I've said it many times before. If it's over the top, it's an op, and that's exactly what, like you mentioned earlier about the Trump thing on Easter. Recently, I think it was a few days ago, he was talking about how talking about Iran, saying that we're gonna bomb it into the ground or whatever. There's this whole thing about saying that they're going to force open the Strait of Hormuz, which, by the way, if this was a real war, why didn't Iran shut that down on day one? Why did it take them a few weeks for them to actually bring that into the picture? That alone tells you that this whole thing is a wag.
Why are you going shutting it? If it's not been shut, why are you going shutting it now?
Because you have to play. This is all part of the storyline, because people are too dumb to understand that. Oh, if this was real, why wouldn't they have just put heavily economic sanctions on us right from day one and say, "Oh, you're going to start bombing us? We'll shut down the Strait of Hormuz." Now we got that plot line on the in the mind of the normies, and now they're seeing this, and now we're seeing this whole thing with this Iran thing is. Obviously, it's killing Trump's image in the minds of a lot of people, including a lot of people in the MAGA movement. But the thing is that what they don't understand is this is exactly what Trump and the military wants, because this is exactly what is needed in order to bring people up to speed with how Israel works, and their control over our court system, over our justice system, over the judicial branch, the executive branch, going back decades. By framing the now defunct state of Israel with a body swapped out Bibi Netanyahu, taking the fall for a fake war in order to reveal to the people exactly what they've really done in the past. The Gaza thing severely damaged Israel's reputation worldwide, and now this Iran thing, now it's being led directly to exposing to the public exactly how much control Israel has had over this country going back decades. So, right now we have the paper record, the New York Times, flat out telling the public stuff like Israel, like Trump is doing this for Israel, or Israel is in control of our situation. When in decades past, whenever anybody of any notoriety would come out and even suggest something like that, Pat Buchanan, for example, that's a perfect example. Back in the 90s, they would always get killed. They, if not literally, they would have their reputations ruined. The mainstream media would all turn against them. The Rhino Republicans, like William Buckley, would attack them. The evangelical Christian crowd would attack them. This was a career killer in decades past. But for even suggesting the idea that the United States is under the control of Israel, now this is openly being flaunted out by the so-called leftist mainstream media. Meanwhile, on the other end of the aisle, you have the Candace Owens, the Tucker Carlsons, and Andrew Tate. All of these people are going, who are for the MAGA crowd. The more people on the right, exposing to them exactly just how much, openly how much Israel has been in control. Mentioning stuff like the USS Liberty, 9/11. Tucker Carlson has recently, directly linked 9/11 to Israel. We have Candace Owens going in.
Would you say that Israel's been set up?
Absolutely. Q said many times, saving Israel for last, reason not stated at this time. This was back in 2018, 2019. Because Israel is the head of the snake. You can't get rid of the head of the snake before getting rid of the rest. Because at the end of the day, if you try to attack Israel openly, well, what's going to happen? All of the mainstream controlled, Zionist, globalist controlled media will destroy you, just like they destroyed Trump when he tried to come out against the COVID vaccine jab back in early 2020. They destroyed him. When he suggested hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, they said that, they're telling you to drink bleach. So instead he changed his tactic and then bring out the warp speed plan in order to get people back to work and open up the economy again. So this is the thing. This is what's known as This is what I always try to say about fifth generation warfare. Is at the end of the day, you have to plan everything meticulously and remember that everything is all being done not for the purpose of defeating the deep state because they've already been defeated, but for the purpose of waking up the public to and conditioning them to the idea that that this is how the world has really worked for decades, and only then can we start seeing stuff like the arrests or the Epstein files fully being revealed, or Hillary being lynched, or people or stuff like that. It won't be until then. We have to until the full exposure of things like Israel happens. That isn't. We won't be seeing that. And also, speaking of which, we've just I think it was yesterday, the front cover of the New York Times and even the leftist media, because you have to remember that the rest of the media, they get their cues off of the morning newspaper, off of the morning issue of the New York Times of that day. So they end up going and reporting stuff like that Epstein had heavy connections to Israel, that he was in a meeting with Mossad agents. And then as for Trump, they're setting him up as the fall guy, and Q talked about this as well in his post back during Trump's first term, saying Trump, I will take strings and arrows for you, but at the end I will come out the other side redeemed. Essentially saying, Q told us years ago that this was going to happen, that Trump was going to take all the slings and arrows. He's going to take everything upon his shoulders in order to, as the face of what they're portraying as the evil, in order to wake up the public to what's really important. So, at the end of the day,
well, a couple of things that you touched on there was condition the normies, condition the public, because this is fifth generation warfare. What do you say to that, Alex, seeing as we've just been talking about how the societies have been groomed, and now somebody's going to accept all these sling and arrows as a sacrifice for us? What's your take on it, mate?
Oh, which bit specifically are you thinking of? Well, the bit that this is what Trump is actually doing?
Well, I'm not sure what he's actually doing. Is he taking these slings and arrows because he's being set up to take this, or he's doing it on behalf of something? If he's looking like he's the pure evil, then there's got to be a remedy to it. So what's the act of remedy in this?
I'll probably start with, right. So I'm not going to speak from a sociological perspective. I'm going to speak from a literary perspective. In the study of fairy tales, what we do know, a bit like Hollywood, is they all tend to end with a happy ever after. Whatever, the negative stuff that happens, whether it's with Cinderella and the wicked stepmother and the ugly sisters, or Beauty and the Beast, or whatever it is, there's always a happy ever after, because otherwise, fairy tales, nobody would buy into them. Well, that's the nature of a fairy tale, isn't it? You buy into it because you get the promise of a happy ever after. So from a literary perspective, we know that there are probably, roughly, it's argued in theory, 7 different types of storyline that exist, and that's it, and everything else is a version of them. A happy ever after is the thing that the human psyche wants, which means it's something that can be played with very easily, because people want to believe in a happy ever after. In reality, it's very rare that you get a happy ever after, because as much as anything else, at what point does the ever after bit get cut off? Because there's always tomorrow. And in this life, you could be happy today, since people have said that in the chat about us being happy. You particularly, well, you'll be happy today, not happy tomorrow, not happy the day after that, ecstatic the day after that. So what is the ever after? Into eternity, or when the story ends? Whose story? Who's telling that story? And what is that, if we're going to carry on and mix metaphors a bit, what is that pot of gold at the end of that rainbow? What is it that people are looking to find? Do people really believe that peace is the cessation of all hostility for all times? Because if you claim that that's what Trump's doing, it's almost like an incredible claim that Donald Trump, a man who lives on Earth for a particular period of time and then dies like everybody else, has put to the sword every war, every possibility war. It seems to me that if we're talking about stories and literary arcs and so on, that there's only one type of creature that manages to successfully tell the happy ever after story, and this would be a god, not a man. So personally, I don't know what all these converging lines mean, except that if we're all wanting to believe in a happy ever after and Trump's offering us one, we should be extremely wary about that.
Let's give your opinion on this one, Taylor. I don't know how recent this one is. It's only come to my eyes recently, but again, this is what a step up from what you were saying. So you're saying he's taking all these hits. This is like, you know, he's not pulling any punches with where he's stomping on.
Well, someone has to play the part of the bad guy in this movie. And
just hang on, mate. I'm trying to get this.
Look, regardless, we win. I'm getting a lot of reports. They've been meeting for many hours, as you probably have noticed. We'll see what happens. Look, regardless, we win. Regardless what happens, we win. We've totally defeated that country. And so let's see what happens. Maybe they make a deal, maybe they don't. From the standpoint of America, we win. One other thing that's happening is that boats are sailing up and heading out to our country. Big, beautiful tankers, and we're loading them up with oil and gas and everything else. And it's a pretty beautiful thing to see.
What about Iran's assets in other countries?
We're going to see what happens. We're in very deep negotiations with Iran. We win regardless. We've defeated them militarily. They've dropped a couple of water mines. You call them water mines in the boat. We've defeated all of their water boats too. Their Navy has gone 158 ships. They have 28 water droppers, mine droppers, they call them. All of them are sunk. They probably have a couple of mines in the water. We have mine sweepers out there. We're sweeping the strait. In addition to that, we're negotiating. Whether we make a deal or not makes no difference to me. The reason is because we've won. Whether you listen to the fake news or not, you know, it's amazing. Their credibility is down to 13%. The media credibility down to 13%. Think of it. We defeated their Navy. We defeated their Air Force. We defeated their anti-aircraft. We defeated their radar. We defeated their leaders. Their leaders are all dead. And now all we do is we'll open up the strait, even though we don't use it, because we have a lot of other countries in the world that do use it that are either afraid or weak or cheap. I don't know what it is, but we were not helped by NATO, that I can tell you. How do you know that? Why do you say that? Why do you say that? You don't know anything. Who are you with? Who are you with?
NBC News, Julie Circuit.
ABC?
NBC.
Well, that's fake news. Let me just tell you, we win, no matter what. We've defeated their military. They have no Navy. 158 ships are underwater, undersea. All of their minesweepers and all of their, they call them mine droppers. Can you imagine? A country has 28 mine droppers. You think that's nice? With all of that being said, they're all defeated, by the way. They're all at the bottom of the sea. Now, with all of that, they have no Navy. They have no radar. They have no Air Force. Their leaders are all dead. Khomeini is gone. For many years, he ruled. He's gone. With all of that, let's see what happens. But from my standpoint, I don't care.
China is preparing to ship weapons to Iran.
Well, if China does that, China's going to have big problems, okay?
So China's going to have big problems. I think this is maybe a week or so back, because he's talking about opening the straits, but now he's talking about closing the straits. So is he taking all this flack, shall we say metaphorically, because it's nothing is going on in Iran? It's just a narrative that people are being spun through the media. Is that what you're saying the story is from Q? Or these are actually doing this? because I'm trying to get at whether people are being bombed in Iran because, you know, the media from your end are saying the Iranian people want this, and then there's videos saying that no, we don't want to be bombed. Trump saying they love the sound of bombing. It's, if this is a story, especially with this oil thing, if it's closed, we do use that. As Alex said earlier, the fuel then is getting rationed and we can't deliver food. Then we end up on food stamps. This is going to make people suffer a lot. Are you saying that that is all part of the plan to wake people up, that people have got to suffer for that?
Well, first of all, let me just say this.
First of all,
let me just say this, is that every single time that you see a speech by Trump, who might not even be Trump, it's probably an impersonator, but that's neither here nor there. Anytime you see a speech from Trump or a passing of a law by Congress or something the fake news says, the best thing always to do is come at it is remember the foundation that you're standing on, and take everything from it on that foundation, which is that everything that we're watching is a movie. And then then you have to assume, what role does this play in the movie? Why is this being done for that purpose? And so at the end, so that's why, that helps you to be able to, stay on that foundation, helps you to get lost, helps you to not get lost in the matrix of the clown world that is being portrayed to us through the media. And someone in the chat asked, why is Trump going on the fake news networks telling people that it's fake news? Well, I mean, the answer to that is pretty obvious. It's because too many idiots still watch the fake news, which is now Q control fake news. But that's besides the point. So anyway, to answer your question about this whole, Iran thing, is that, yeah, like you said, the whole point is that he needs to look like the bad guy here. He has to be the one that makes it look like that Israel is controlling him, so that way the public can understand, hey, Israel has been controlling our politics going back decades, and then expose them for the real stuff: 9/11, USS Liberty, the bombings in Tanzania. Even the assassination of the Kennedys going back to the 60s, just going on and on and on. And unfortunately, yes, people have to see stuff like their oil prices going up in order to be able to understand that, because unfortunately, as you and I both know, is that unless people feel it in their wallets, or rather, unless they get a knock on the door, people don't give a damn. So you have to make people feel.
There's one thing somebody knock on your door for a tax you're not liable for, as opposed to not being able to get a loaf of bread because of inflation that's being artificially raised. If this is only a story, if this isn't real, if none of this is real, and it's to make people suffer, that is totally different to what we're talking about, Taylor. Doesn't compare. You're talking about backing a plan hatched by whoever. This man is the target man at the moment, that he's going to take everything, and people are going to have to suffer in order to understand that it's all to do with Israel. So they come against Israel. Well, me and Alex are looking at it from the scriptural side of it, saying when everybody turns on Israel, we have to look to see what's going on here, because at some point somebody's going to come along and go, hey, come on, let's calm down. Let's have a minute. And who is that going to be? But how much bloodshed needs to happen for that? I mean, if a plan was put in place by anybody else who was a dictator for that, we'd class it as genocide. What do you say, Alex?
It's the age-old problem. We are not seeing beyond the screen, beyond the image that's presented to us. So, again, if we've got a happy ever after narrative, we can claim that anything that's happening in the interim is all like the prequel to the final episode, and that's going to come at the end. But the end's always in the future. So again, it's trust the plan. Now, to trust the plan, you've got to trust the actors. Who are the actors? The ones who have control. And what have they got control of? The media, various media, even alt media is possibly controlled, and we just don't know. So the problem is the problem of trust. There's a Q narrative, whether it's true or not, isn't the issue. It's how do people get to trust it just because the narrative says, trust me. This is something that cannot be gainsaid in any way. Reality is, I mean, at one time, people used to talk about intuition a lot more and trusting your guts. But what does that actually mean? But whatever it means, discernment. Let's move beyond intuition, which could be a vague subjective impression. Discernment. How do you discern what's true and what's not? You know, is it just your spidey senses tingling? How do you know it's not just your mind? How do you know that you're not just full of anxiety? So we need some criteria outside of the narrative itself. If a narrative says, trust me, it's the narrative that's saying, trust the narrative. I don't know how people are going to get past that problem other than by rolling up the sleeves, doing thorough research. And it doesn't matter whatever we say on here. You know, at the end of the day, we're only an echo. At best, we're an echo of truth. The truth transcends any articulation of the truth. Yeah. So there's the truth and it gets articulated in a marketplace where there's a lot of false voices as well. So we have got to somehow find a way of getting to that truth as best we can. We've never got 100% certainty. The question is, what frame are we using? And if it's just an intellectual frame or a prefabricated frame that says, well, I'm talking from within my frame and this is true, why should I trust you? Why should I trust you? So it's still the question, what are we trusting in? Anyone who trusts in man is mad.
Well, when I find it interesting how long this has been in place. We're talking about 5 generations, you were saying, Taylor. How far would you say that goes back to, 5 generations, Alex?
100 years. A generation is 20 years.
19, so are we like talking 1926-ish?
Yeah, between the 2 world wars.
Right. So we've got things that have happened that must fit into this narrative somewhere. If it was because these lot were winning, that's one thing. But we need to start trying to bring these two things close together to see, because at the moment in time, if we go with Q and Taylor, it's part of the plan to expose Israel and the globalists that are already defeated, but they've got to do all this to expose what our own governments have been doing to us. Is that a fair thing to say, Taylor?
Yeah, you're undoing literally hundreds of years of brainwashing and of planning, meticulous planning, and like really the fact that it could be done in just a decade or so really is a tantamount to what we call a miracle. So at the end of the day, it's like, you can't expect it to be you can't expect it to be a perfect transition. You have a bit of a bumpy ride there, but at the end of the day, once you
I think mass genocide by a migration policy might be a bit of, you've got to go through a bit.
Yeah, I mean, what Taylor's saying it's not, the thing about it is it's not implausible, which is a good starting point. All theories must start off by not being implausible. Now, that's not the same as them, having probative, what they call in philosophy, probative force. So it's not proven, but at least, if it's plausible, or like you'd say, it's better to say if it's not implausible, then it can stay on the table. And it's not implausible. It's a strategy that has coherence. Whether that's what's happening or not is a separate question. So as long as we don't substitute plausibility, because plausibility is connected to probability. Yeah, if it's plausible, there's a degree of probability, but there isn't a degree of certitude. The problem comes when uncritical people say that plausibility is certainty. I mean, plausibility is not to be underestimated. I mean, one of the reasons I maintain faith despite all challenges is because when I look at the plausibility of so many different aspects of the Bible, the structure of reality, what we might call creation, other things that happen, there's a coherence which doesn't strictly speaking prove anything, but the coherence itself is a powerful argument to be open to that being true. And faith can feed on that in a way that isn't just unhealthy and speculative. You can say, actually, that coherence is an important thing, particularly when you see a lot of incoherence in the world. So we've got to give brownie points to any approach which can present coherence well. But the problem with that is anything that needs to make a case can understand that coherence can win over hearts and minds. So if you can produce a plausible and coherent argument which is nonetheless false, that's the real sticking point, because your logic and your thinking can take you so far and your critical reasoning. But there's always this whole is greater than the sum of the parts bit, and that's why the discernment that we need is deeper than just appearances. You know, the stuff that lurks in the shadows. You know, Lucifer, you know, whatever that means, the devil comes dressed as an angel of light. So, you know, that's the ultimate con trick. So we have to be aware of every kind of bait and switch, every type of claim, no matter how plausible. It's good, but it has a shadow side.
You just relate Lucifer to the devil, mate.
That's what I'm saying. The devil comes dressed as an angel of light, and the angel of light is Lucifer. So the devil dresses up in a costume as Lucifer.
He's not an angel.
I know, but he dresses an angel of light, and that's how the culture portrays him. The culture portrays him as an angel.
What we've got here, well, that's what I'm saying about the culture. That's why these standout words, this standalone book has got to have something. What this 5 generation things, that means the way we're looking at it then is, from Taylor's point of view, the story was being won by the globalists up to a certain point, where then Trump's come in and Cura's said this is going to happen, all these things are going to happen, and Trump's going to be the one who's going to take all this stuff. We still have either rumors of wars or these wars are actually happening. Whether he's actually, I've heard that 2 C-130s were shot down by Iran, and they picked up some soldiers, but some were left. Are these just stories being made up? Because the ones that were winning are now no longer winning, and the media is more or less battling it out, because there's 2 last videos here, and these are the ones that have happened within these generations. So at some point, these were on top, is what I would take it. I don't know why the sound just doesn't work straight off the bat.
In the late 19th century, a Jewish dream of freedom from persecution in the biblical land of milk and honey. But to settle in a country inhabited by Arabs, the Jews needed protection. The British were to provide it. The British Army captured the Holy Land in the First World War, driving the Turks from the Middle East. The British wanted Palestine as a military base to protect the vital artery of the empire, the Suez Canal. For this, they needed international approval. The Zionists tipped the balance.
The Zionists were the people who were lobbying all over the world in the Versailles Peace Conference and everywhere else to see that Britain did get this charge, so that there was a contract here that we would help Britain become the ruling power, and Britain would help us to develop the Jewish national home.
Zionism was born in Europe in the late 19th century.
president of the World Jewish League, said, "Germany is our public enemy number one. It is our object to declare war without mercy against her." In March of 1933, before the Germans had enacted any anti-Jewish laws, and before any hostilities against the Jews had taken place, worldwide Jewish leaders officially issued a declaration of war against Germany. A worldwide Jewish boycott of German goods began. 20,000 Jews protested at New York City Hall. Rallies and boycotts were directed against German goods. Samuel Untermyer, speaking on behalf of International Jewry, declared war on Germany with an economic boycott. The front page of the March 24th London Daily Express carried the headline, "Judea declares war on Germany." 19
So we've got a couple of things there that seem to show us that these Zionists, and you don't have to be Jewish and speak smarts to be Zionists, but these are the Jews who say that they're Jews and who aren't. I mean, the Semitic Jews would be the Arabs, and they wouldn't need protecting from themselves. So there's obviously some kind of colonizing going on that Britain have been part of a contract to. We have that with the Balfour Declaration. So we've got a point here where a foothold is being taken in the Middle East. Then we get into the Second World War, which is meant to be beneficial to get Israel recognized. So in 1947, after the World War, you have the CIA then being formed. 48, you have Israel. And 1953, 54, you've got Iran regime change, which is now what we've got. So Israel has been in charge at some point. I use Israel as in the state. So they have been in charge and have been controlling America. But what Taylor, I won't speak for you, Taylor, but what you seem to be hinting at is that that has been changed, but it's been changed under the table, and now things are just being brought out bit by bit. You're muted, Taylor, if you're there.
Yes, that's exactly right.
So what do you think, Alex?
Really, not too much to say, really.
On that, you've nothing to say on that last video?
Not really.
All I can say about that last video is that that last clip you played about the Jews in World War II, that was from Europa, the last battle, by the way. I recognize that clip, and that documentary, as I said in the chat, was heavily what's the word I'm looking, inspired by Mike King's work, the Bad War. Most of the information in there is taken from that book. So just wanted to throw that out there. Not important, but you know.
Well, it's as if you're saying that he's the one who's speaking on behalf of Q, because if he is speaking on behalf of Q, then you're saying that you're hinting that Europa, that is part of it.
No. Hold on. Mike King has nothing to do with Q. He's just an anon.
He's an anon.
Yes.
Okay, but he promotes Q.
Yes.
Okay, now I am really confused. Well, listen, we've gone over time anyway. Taylor, I know you came on a bit late, but it's nice to see you've got your computer back. Have you got anything to report from your community?
Not at the moment, no. I'm not really worried about that.
Oh. Okay, so nothing to report locally?
No, I've got nothing on that right now, no.
Bloody hell, I'm glad at least I had something to talk about with you two, pervert. Well, do you want to wrap up then, Taylor? Give us if you've given any stuff, or if you've got any stuff up and coming, just give your stuff out again where people can find you.
Yeah. So my what's it called? My Rumble page is the Raconteurs Report. And it's the same as my Twitter page. and my YouTube as well. And I have actually started uploading on my YouTube again, which I'm not getting much views from, but it's something.
Okay, mate. Well, thanks for your time, mate. Hopefully you could get on a bit earlier next week, but I do appreciate you giving up your time, Taylor.
Yeah, no problem. Just happy to just chime in.
Cheers,
Listen,
cheers, Taylor.
you're always welcome because it creates debate, mate.
All right, God bless.
All right, now God bless. Well, do you think you could wrap us up, mate?
Yeah, I reckon I could. I was conscious of the time, and I think ultimately we do cram a lot into the shows, and yeah, I think I said last week that within 2 weeks things would really have hotted up because there was this thing about the 10th and the oil running out in Europe, and there's a tanker situation and what's going on with hormones and the games that Trump's playing. Wrong foots everybody. People don't really know what's going on. So they're having to trust sources that they don't really feel they can trust. But what we do know is all media are doing a lot of reporting from Frontline about what's happening in Ireland. Diesel prices are biting. So the point is, this is a manufactured war. You know, a lot of people, when I speak to some friends who don't have my background, they automatically just call me a conspiracy theorist. And we don't need to believe this. This is just different nations with competing interests trying to secure their interests in the current global realignment. So there is a new world order coming, but they wouldn't put it in terms of what we understand new world order to be. They say it's a reconfiguration, it's realpolitik, it's a multipolar world, America's losing its grip. Has had to reconfigure its own approach to the rest of the world. Trump's made noises about Greenland, did Venezuela, attacked Iran. He's advocating for a form of regionalism in line with the Monroe Doctrine. He's offered an open door regarding Putin in Ukraine and Xi Jinping, and basically Taiwan, to say, yeah, why don't us elites just have control over our regions and cooperate? And of course, he's not going to say that. He's signalled that. It's a very clear signal. So the world is being reconfigured. That there's no doubt about that. It might not be a unitary world order. It might be a tripartite world order that they go for, and they want to break everything into regions. So, yeah. Meanwhile, back on, I'll not say planet Earth for all our planet Earth contingent out there. Meanwhile, back on Earth, real people are facing real issues. So whether they buy into narratives and happy ever afters or not, they're still having to live, and it's getting harder for them to do that. Now, whether that is going to wake them up or not, well, it's going to wake them up to something, because it's your survival instinct, it's your bottom line. If you can't put, like you said earlier, bread on table, it's a bottom line. So people are going to come out over diesel, and they're coming out in Ireland over it. It's only a matter of time. And I do believe that the overarching elite agenda, the one that obviously Taylor's saying is being undermined, but what was the elite agenda, was to get us all to turn against each other with internal civil war. And again, while we know there's a migrant reality that's happening, where the liberal lefties have got a point is, if we attack migrants, and this is even when I agree with the Greens, if we just attack the migrants, not instead of the billionaires, which is their meme, but if we attack the migrants instead of the oligarchs and elites who are creating the division, then we have been distracted successfully. So I think we need to remember who the common enemy is, and I say enemy in inverted commas, because you still got to love your enemy according to Jesus. The question is, how do you love them? Is it by rolling over and saying, oh, tickle me belly? Or is it by telling the truth? And telling the truth no matter what the cost. And sometimes stepping out and engaging in radical actions. Sometimes you can't do that as part of a group. Sometimes you've got to stand on your own 2 feet and take the consequences. It's scary, but some people are going to have the courage to step forward and speak the truth. And as well as that, there will be a movement of spontaneous rebellion against this oppression. The concern is bloodshed. I said in about 2 weeks' time, we'll have a lot better idea. Well, we're now 1 week into that, and I think from what we've seen in the last week, the saber rattling's increased, the confusion's increased, but we can see more and more on the streets that's happening. So I think by next week, we'll certainly be, again, I'm pretty sure that there's going to have been some pretty interesting developments one way or another. And it's going to have calmed down completely. Trump has to say, we've won, we've definitely won, we've convincingly won. He has to say that, to say first. The Iranians have to try and say that. We don't really know the state of play, but in another week's time, it's going to be pretty obvious, because the dust is going to start to settle a little bit. You know, is there going to be any pledge to bring fuel prices down? Are these protesters going to get shut down by the military or the police, or is there going to be some back down for the powers that be? Within the next week or so, we're going to have some answers to that, I think.
We'll see. Well, the supermarket shelves will start telling the story. But we added this last time. We had an inflation of fuel, and we had stockpiles of food and stuff like that just not being put on the shelves. We had all kinds of stuff going on. But when you're saying that transport physically can't take that, you know, one fellow was saying that the amount of diesel I have to put in, if they curtail it, I have to put, say, for argument's sake, it was 140 litres of diesel, and they'll only let me put 130. But for me to pick up, take, drop off, and come back, I need to put that amount in. Then all of a sudden, my rig is not on the road. So that food that I take doesn't go. That, you know, that minerals or whatever it is he's shipping, it doesn't go. That's just one truck. When that expands, we have this knock-on effect, and we don't know if it's real or not. You know, it's real when you can't put anything on your table, when you've gone through your cupboards. You know, we know in our past that they've ate mud pies and things like that. Are we going backwards to that? Is that where people really have to go to, Alex, to say what else is there? Because when you get to that point, whoever comes in, you know, the master who'll only beat you with a stick once compared to the master who'll beat you 10 times. You'd rather get beaten by the master who'll only hit you once. You know, you'd rather pay £100 fine on something you're not liable for. That is Stockholm syndrome at its best. And I think that's what we're going to have to wait and see, whether it's going to be the Stockholm syndrome that'll break, or will we start fighting amongst ourselves and they have to come in with some kind of operation where we're just going to take your rights for now, but you'll get them back.
It's difficult. It's difficult, this one, because what we notoriously see, if you look at coups and so on and so forth and all the things that happen within this type of political unrest at this level, usually there are high-profile politicians get strung up.
Yeah.
When it gets to that,
that's to satisfy the general public. They think something's been done, but then all underlined, all the handshakes are already done, the contracts are already signed, palms already greased, and then we've got a media that will pass off that this is what we need to do because we've brokered peace and safety in the world now. We've just got to stick to these rules. This is the God that we worship, and these are the rules that we follow. Anybody who disagrees with them, we're going to get rid of, because once we've done that, we'll have the perfect society which is what they've always wanted, what they had once upon a time until God intervened. You know, so I think we are seeing the end that was written at the beginning coming to fruition now. It's, you know, whichever way we look at it, it's being played out or it's just playing out. We don't know which it is. Maybe it's both, because we do participate. I'd like to thank everybody who has been in the chat room, who stayed with us live, and thanks to those of you that watched the show through the week. the messages that we get, it gives us not only hope but inspiration to keep going with this, because people are questioning family members through things and doing their own research, because at the end of the day, we're only asking the questions. People who want to come with answers, particularly scriptural ones. Why do you believe what you want to believe? Nobody wants to come on and talk about stuff like that. For me, if it's not in the Bible, let's not believe it. If it's in the Bible, let's talk about it. Let's sharpen each other. But correct a wise man and he'll be thanked. Correct fools, and you're always going to be mocked. So we're going to play out this evening with, somebody wrote a book once. I think it might have been somebody called Alex Brocklehurst, and he wrote a book, and this is called "The Heart of Flesh." This is the song that belongs. This is the song that belongs to this book. These are all to do with this heart of flesh that has come from a certain time that a certain man took everything for us. Hopefully see you next week. Night. God bless, guys.
Catch you later, guys.
In the garden's first light, just a whisper at the end, a trickster testing fiber, a shadow in the hedge, but the story was rescripted in the Babylonian night, where the fires of old Persia cast a harder, colder light. We built a co-equal nemesis, a god of our own shame, and gave the cosmic prosecutor a sovereign, terrifying name. But the dragon is a parasite, a secondary wound on a creation meant for glory, where the grace was once attuned. Not a co-eternal kingdom, not a power on the throne, just a hollowed out inversion of a heart turned into stone. Give us a heart of flesh to feel, a compass through the grave, to navigate the shadows at the breaking of the day. From the quiet court of Job to the beasts in Daniel's dream, the adversary shape-shifted through the shifting of the scheme. We projected all our terror, we displaced all our guilt on a throne of ancient darkness that our own hands had built. Now the structures have been hallowed, and the truth is weaponized, and the architecture of the soul is broken and disguised. It's not an abstract skill, it's a way of truly seeing the cruciform pattern in the center of our being. to resist the culture of the stone, not by force or by decree, but the resilient joy of suffering that sets the captive free. For the dragon is a parasite, a secondary wound on a creation meant for glory, where the grace was once attuned. Not a co-eternal kingdom, not a power on the throne, just a hollowed out inversion of a heart turned into stone. Give us a heart of flesh to feel, a compass through the gray, to navigate the shadows at the breaking of the day. From the stone, heart of flesh. In the age of inversion, find the center. A new heart also will I give you, and a new spirit will I put within you. And I will take away the stony heart out of your flesh, and I will give you